In this lecture I will discuss the development of the testes and ovary. So first I will take the I will discuss the testes development. Testes develops in dorsal abdominal wall. What are the sequence of events which are happening? You can see the handmade diagram. Appearance of the genital ridges or gonadal ridges. The coelomic epithelium, which is also called as mesothelium, covering the medial part of the mesonephros, proliferates and becomes a collection of cells called as genital ridge. Now then is testis cords. Cells of the genital ridge migrate into the mesoderm of the mesonephros as solid cords called as testis cords. They are just going towards the mesonephros. Third is appearance of the primordial germ cells. These are the specialized large rounded cells migrating from the genital ridge into the mesoderm of the mesonephros and lie between the testis cords. So another source of the germ cell is one is, as we have discussed, that is from the genital ridge. Second is from the wall of the yolk sac. You can see the diagram, and migrated towards the genital ridge. Next step is in the development of the testes is the changes happening in the testis cord. Initially primitive testis cords, it increases in length. It extends deep into the medulla. You can see in the diagram. Then is cords, they break into the network of tiny cell strands. You can see here to form the rete testis. Then anastomosis is happening with each other. So that network form the rete testis. So rete testis is formed. So initially the cords, they are migrating towards the medulla. Then these cords, they break into network of tiny cell strands. Then anastomosis is happening between these tiny cell strands to form the rete testis. Next step is the central cells of these cords, they degenerate and become hollow, which longitudinally splits into two, forming the seminiferous tubule. So in other words, we can see the canalization of the sex cord or testis cords is happening to form the seminiferous tubule. These tubules, they grow to form the straight tubules and rete testis. These tubules meet the blind end of the mesonephric tubule attached to the Wolffian duct, forming the head of epididymis. You can see this is the head of the epididymis, and this Wolffian duct is mesonephric duct. So they are just coming close to each other. Later on, the partition between these two ends disappear and communication is established. Now these seminiferous tubules are lined by two types of cells, that is sustentacular cells of Sertoli. Sex cords, it is derived from the sex cord cells. These sex cord cells are coming from coelomic epithelium. So these sustentacular cells of Sertoli, they are coming from these sex cord cells. Second set of cells is the primordial germ cells. They are derived from the yolk sac, as I have told you earlier. So they are also derived from the cells within the genital ridge. So both the things, they are contributing to the formation of the primordial germ cells, and these primordial germ cells, they form the spermatogonia. Now these sustentacular cells of Sertoli, they produce two type of substances, that is inducers and suppressors. Inducers, they help in the differentiation of the mesonephric duct, and suppressors, they suppress the development of the paramesonephric duct. Next is the appearance of the interstitial cells of Leydig. Some cells of the testis cord, they form the interstitial cells lying between the seminiferous tubule. Then next is tunica albuginea. A mesoderm of the mesonephros cuts off the connection of the testis cords from the genital ridge, because the genital ridge is basically the proliferation of the coelomic epithelium. So that coelomic epithelium, it sends the cords of the cells towards the hilum of the testis. So what is happening, the mesoderm, which is present in the mesonephros, it just cut off the connection of the testis cords from the genital ridge, and they form the tunica albuginea. This mesoderm is also forming the mediastinum testis and septule testis. Mesorchium is, initially testis is elongated and spindle shaped. By 4th month it becomes oval and compact. So it is connected with the mesonephros by short mesentery called as mesorchium. So this mesorchium is what? It is basically a type of mesentery which is hanging the testis from the posterior abdominal wall. So these 7 steps you should know in the development of the testis. So mesonephric tubules or Wolffian duct, they form the efferent ductules of the testis. So what are those? That is duct of epididymis, vas deferens, seminiferous tubule and ejaculatory duct. So duct of epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicle, and ejaculatory duct. So these are the structures which are derived from the efferent ductules of the testis. So these efferent ductules are coming from mesonephric tubules. Now the medullary cords remain solid till puberty. Spermatogonia develops and forms sperms only after puberty when the seminiferous tubules are formed by canalization of sex cord. Initially we call them as sex cords. Later on, the canalization of those sex cords is happening because of the degeneration of the central cells. They form the seminiferous tubule. For this reason, the testicular tumor called seminoma is unknown before puberty, as the seminoma arises from the seminiferous tubule, and these seminiferous tubules they develop after puberty. So they are not developed before puberty. Now the testes, they secrete the Mullerian inhibiting substance, that is by the Sertoli cells they do this function, and the Leydig cells they secrete the testosterone. The Mullerian inhibiting substance, paramesonephric duct suppressed remnant in males are appendix testis and prostatic utricle. Rest of things they disappear. The testosterone, Leydig cells, in what is the function? Leydig cells they secrete the testosterone, they stimulate the mesonephric duct. So efferent ductules, epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles. So these are formed. Coming to the next topic, that is the descent of testis, which is very, very important. Now before starting with the descent of testis, so you should have an idea of the gubernaculum. The formation of the gubernaculum is, it is a fold of coelomic epithelium which is called as inguinal fold, which is formed when the mesonephric duct or Wolffian duct going behind the coelomic epithelium to open into dorsal wall of vesico-urethral part of primitive urogenital sinus. So they are going to open into that. The mesoderm within the fold condenses to form a fibromuscular structure called gubernaculum. You can see in the diagram, this is the gubernaculum. The descent of the gubernaculum, its proximal end is attached to the developing testis or ovary. Distal end pushes the ventral abdominal wall, forming the inguinal canal. Finally attached to the skin of the scrotum in males and labia majora in case of females. The growth hormone stimulate the descent and loosen the tissue through which the gubernaculum is descending. Now this gubernaculum is attached to the coelom, forming peritoneal cavity by a slip. So along with the descent of the gubernaculum, a pouch of the peritoneum descends called processus vaginalis. In previous diagram, you can see this is the fold of the peritoneum which is going along with the descent of the gubernaculum. So this process vaginalis is going to form a double layer, this tunica vaginalis around the testis. So this is how the descent of the gubernaculum is happening. So if we see the anatomy of the gubernaculum, gross anatomy, if we see, the proximal end is attached to the testis or ovary. The distal end passes through the inguinal canal and main band is attached to the scrotum. This is the normal anatomy. But after coming out of the superficial inguinal ring, it sends 4 other additional slips to the 4 different sides. What are those? To the root of penis, superficial perineal pouch, to the femoral region at the saphenous opening, towards the anterior superior iliac spine lying superficial to the external oblique. So these are the additional 4 slips of the gubernaculum once it is coming out through the superficial inguinal ring. So starting from the lower end of testis or ovary, then passing downward, passing through the inguinal canal and reaching the base of scrotum, then reaching to the skin of the scrotum. So this is normal anatomy. But after coming out from the superficial inguinal ring, these are the 4 sites where the you can see the it can send the 4 different slips to these 4 structures, because it is important when we will discuss the cryptorchidism. So this anatomy is important to know. Now coming to this descent of the testis develop in the posterior abdominal wall in the lumbar region. You can see in the diagram, lower pole of the testis is attached to the scrotal skin through the band of mesenchyme called as gubernaculum. So up to 2nd month, this testis, it is lying in the lumbar region. You can see in the first number 1. Then reaches the iliac fossa in the 3rd month, reaches the deep inguinal ring in 4th month. Here it takes rest and it remain there for 3 months, that is up to 7 month it is lying at the deep inguinal ring. Then it passes through the inguinal canal in 8th month. At superficial ring it is coming at the 8th month. At the root of scrotum it is coming at 9 month, and at the bottom of scrotum it is just reaching shortly before or after birth. So this is the normal descent of testes from lumbar to the scrotum. Now this scrotal ligament is the remnant of gubernaculum in males, connecting lower end of the testis with the bottom of scrotum. What are the factors which are responsible for the descent of the testis? That is elongation of the trunk of embryo, then contraction of the gubernaculum. The gubernaculum is the mesenchymal band which is just bringing the testis downward. Then enlargement of the pelvis, then differential growth of the abdomen. So more growth of the ventral wall is happening than the dorsal wall of abdominal cavity. So testis is dragged towards the ventral wall. So next important factor which play an important role in the descent of the testis is the hormones, that is androgen produced by fetal testis. As testis descends into the scrotum, it carries vas and blood vessels along with it. Crossing of vas deferens, if we see in the anatomy of the relation of the different structure, that is vas and blood vessels with that of ureter, the crossing of the vas deferens anterior to the ureter near the urinary bladder is explained on the developmental fact, because as the testis descend into the scrotum, it carries vas and blood vessel along with it. You can see in the diagram. So this is the route it is following. Then coming to the anomalies of the testis, first is undescended testis, we call it as cryptorchidism. One or both the side of the testes, they may fail to descend into the scrotum. So it is seen in 3% in full term. So 97% they have testes in the scrotum in full term babies, and 30% in premature male births it is seen. It may be unilateral or bilateral, as I have told you. It may lie in the abdomen or anywhere along the path of descent. It is usually lying in the inguinal canal. What is the clinical significances or the clinical significances of cryptorchidism? That is, fail to produce mature sperms due to higher abdominal temperature. If they remain in the abdomen, the temperature in the abdomen is high, so maturation of the sperm, it does not happen. Then if it is lying in the abdominal, you can say in the abdomen or in the inguinal canal, it is susceptible to injury, likely to develop malignancy. Then atrophy of the testes may happen. In bilateral cryptorchidism, the individual is sterile. If we look at the medical treatment, the testicular hormones are used to promote the descent of the testes. And if we see the surgical treatment, testes are surgically mobilized and fixed to the scrotal floor, which is known as orchidopexy. Coming to the ectopic testis, it is so called when it goes out of its normal path of descent. As we have discussed the normal path of descent from lumbar to scrotum, if we know that, then any arrest at any stage can lead to the condition that is ectopic testis. So when main scrotal band of the gubernaculum is torn, any of 4 additional bands of gubernaculum, which I have told you that once the gubernaculum is just leaving from the superficial inguinal ring, it sends the 4 bands, that is to the root of penis, to the superficial perineal pouch, to the femoral ring in the region of saphenous opening, and towards the anterior superior iliac spine. So any of the 4 additional bands of gubernaculum will drag the testis out of its normal path. So you can see in the diagram, ectopic positions are to the root of penis, we call it as penile testis. If it is lying in the superficial perineal pouch, we call it as perineal testis. If they are lying in the femoral ring near the fossa ovalis, we call it as femoral testis. Towards the anterior superior iliac spine, lying superficial to the external oblique, we call it as inguinal testis. So these are the conditions. Next is testicular feminization. Despite the presence of testes and XY chromosome complement, they appear as normal females. The external genitalia are of a female with vagina ending blindly. Then Klinefelter syndrome, chromosome complement is 47XXY. Testes are small in size with seminiferous tubule showing hyalinization. Spermatogenic arrest leading to infertility. So these are the applied aspect of testes in the development of the testes. Now other anomalies which can happen is absence of testes may be there, duplicated testes may be there, fusion of the testes may be there, anteverted testes, epididymis lies in front, inverted testes lies upside down, higher extension of the tunica vaginalis. So these are the other anomalies of the development of the testes. Now coming to the development of ovary. what are the different sequence of events which are happening in the development of the ovary is, as I have told you, in the development of the testis, that is coelomic epithelium on the medial side of the mesonephros become thickened to form the genital ridge, number one. Then cords of cells proliferate from the coelomic epithelium and grow into the underlying mesoderm to form the sex cords. Then comes the primordial germ cells formed on the walk of yolk sac, migrate along the dorsal mesentery and reach the ovary to form the oogonium. So almost up to this step it is same as it was discussed in the development of the testes. You can see the thickening of the coelomic epithelium, that is forming the genital ridge. Then cords of the cells, they are formed, we call it as sex cords. Then migration of the primordial germ cells, that is from the wall of the yolk sac to the region there that is in the mesonephros portion. So along the dorsal mesentery and reach the ovary to form the oogonium. So these are the three important structures. Now what is happening here? It is different. In testis we have discussed that the growth of the sex cord is happening towards the hilum, that is towards the medullary portion of the testis, the cord like structure. But in this case the sex cord cells, they broken up into small masses or cluster of cells are formed around the primordial germ cells, which are just coming from the wall of the yolk sac, and they form the primordial follicle which remain quiescent till puberty. So these primordial follicles are formed, breaking of the sex cord cells. Then they are just forming a small masses around the primordial germ cells. Then each oogonium derived from the primordial germ cells surrounded by a single layer of cells derived from cortical cords. You can see here in the second diagram. Then interstitial gland cells are derived from mesenchyme of the gonad. So then what happened next? That is oogonia proliferate in fetal life and form about 2 million primary oocyte. No primary oocyte is formed after birth. As no tunica albuginea is formed, the germinal epithelium may contribute to the ovary in postnatal life. As the ovary separates from the regressing mesonephros, it becomes suspended by its own mesentery called as mesovarium. Now here you can see the ovary. The mesonephric duct remnant in females are appendix vesiculosa, ipophrone, paraphrone, Gartner ductus, you can see in the diagram. Then estrogen including maternal and placental sources. In this, the paramesonephric duct, they are stimulated to form the uterine tubes, uterus and upper part of the vagina, and external genitalia stimulated labia, clitoris and lower portion of the vagina. This is how the ovary is contributing to the development of the different structures and the external genitalia development. So by the hormone, that is estrogen. So this is the diagram showing the same thing, that is paramesonephric duct is there, which is going to contribute to the uterus, vagina. So this is degenerating mesonephric duct is there, because no communication is to be established in case of ovary. It is only in case of testes where the efferent ductules of the testes, they are formed. So that communication is formed with the rete testis. But in this case, these cord cells, they are just, you can say, the breaking of these cord cells is happening into small cluster of cells. You can see they are just forming the primordial follicle. So what is left is small strands which are present in this mesoderm. They are going to form the rete ovary, but no communication with the degenerating mesonephric duct. Now descent of ovary, the descent is happening from the lumbar region. A gubernaculum forms and extends from the ovary to the labia majus. It becomes attached to the developing uterus at its junction with the uterine tube. The part of gubernaculum that is between the ovary and uterus, it becomes the round ligament of ovary. Between uterus and labium majus, it becomes the round ligament of uterus. So these are the two ligaments which are basically the part of gubernaculum. Now what are the anomalies which can be seen? Maybe ovary may be absent on one or both the sides. It may be duplicated. May descend into the inguinal canal or even in labium majus. Then adrenal or thyroid tissue may be present in the ovary. Contains cells that are capable of differentiating into various tissues like bone, cartilage, hair, etc. And growth of these cells give rise to peculiar tumor called as teratoma. Thank you very much. If you have any doubt regarding these two topics, you can write in the comment box. Thank you very much.